Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right into this. All right, yeah, Petiti versus the world. This is getting a little bit out of hand, and the pressure is definitely mounting on him. This has everything to do with college football playoff, and it's getting closer and closer to time to make a decision. About the latest they can make this is December. And we're getting ready to get into season, and once that starts, the college football playoff is going to take a bit of a backseat, but tick, 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 you got to make a decision because 2026 is coming up, and you've got to know what your college football playoff format's going to be. Right now, we're 5+7. We're the 12-team playoff, and that's got 1 year left, which is this season. And everybody has a preference to what they want. And Tony Petiti of the Big Ten, who is one of the big power mongers, has a lot to say. And he is the one lone wolf out there that's completely opposed to everybody else. And the pressure is mounting like crazy on him. Now, he is, for some reason, married to the 4-4-2-2-1, which we've talked about a lot. And that's this bad boy here. And you can see the two different versions, the 5+11 versus the 4-4-2-2-1. And the Big Ten's the only conference that's in favor of it. The SEC is now opposed to it. And the 5+11, all three conferences are in favor. Big Ten is not. Now, the reason that Tony Petiti is stuck on the 4-4-2-2-1 is back in February, he came up with this idea. Now, he is a TV executive by trade, and he's done, look, he's smart as crap. I'll just go ahead and tell you, SEC folks, you don't want to hear this, but Tony Petiti cut a deal with Fox Sports that is terrific for the Big Ten. That's why they're making more money for their TV rights than the SEC. Well, he came up with this automatic qualifiers and this play-in weekend, which actually is pretty interesting and would be a lot of fun. But to get to that point, you've got to make a lot of decisions that are going to tick off the other conferences in a major way, and has. And just to give you an example of what a play-in weekend would look like, you take the top 6 in a conference in the SEC or Big Ten, and then they play in to the playoff from there. Now, your 1 and 2, for example, last year, Texas and Georgia, they would have been in no matter what. So they just played for the championship. But 3 would have played 6, 4 would have played 5. And the winners of those 2 games would have got in. And you would have done the exact same thing in the Big Ten. The top 2 would have played for the championship, then 3 through 6 would have played to get in to the playoff, which would be a great weekend of viewing, and it'd be a lot of really good money for the conferences. But what it does, it doubles the number of teams that get into the playoff guaranteed right off the bat, which is Big Ten and SEC get 4 guaranteed. They might even get more. And the Big 12 and the ACC only get 2.
Oh, hell no!
So right off the bat, that didn't sit well with the other conferences. Now here's the tricky part. As part of the memorandum of understanding, the Big Ten, SEC, they got total control. But they agreed they would listen to the Big 12 and the ACC and take their input and allow that to have a say, not necessarily a big say, but they would listen to them and consider their point of view. Well, Tony Petiti has said to that crap. He has no interest in hearing from the ACC or Big 12, and he has proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt because he's not even interested in listening to them. Whereas the SEC, who originally, Greg Sankey, was kind of on board with the 4-4-2-2-1. And when they met back in February and kind of came up with this idea, well, Tony did, Sankey was, pretty darn interested. As part of that, the SEC had to go to a 9-game schedule. Well, Greg Sankey was originally in favor of that and has been pushing it for the last year or two. But the SEC coaches and AD said, you can forget that crap. We don't like our strength of schedule compared to the Big Ten, and we're not moving to a 9-game until that is somehow dealt with. So Sankey backed off, which I'm sure didn't make Tony Petiti happy.
I'll get you for this, deputy.
No, I don't think he's happy with him at all. Now I'm going to let you listen to what Tony has to say about this, and he makes, some interesting points.
A specific decision on format was not reached. Instead, it was agreed that the Big Ten and SEC would control changes to the CFP format and the selection committee process after considering feedback from the membership. Like the revenue share parameters, the Big Ten and SEC's format control is set forth clearly in the agreement that all members signed. With respect to format, the Big Ten has been consistent in its strong preference for a playoff system that allocates spots based on conference standings and the results of play-in games. We want to better connect the regular season and the postseason. A critical goal of any postseason format, regardless of sport, is to keep as many teams alive as deep into the season as possible. We want more conference games to matter in November. Also, the playoff format should not function as a disincentive to schedule tough non-conference games. As we said throughout this process, we are open to considering any format ideas that come from our colleagues or the CFP staff. But to be clear, formats that increase the discretion and role of the CFP selection committee will have a difficult time gaining support from the Big Ten.
Stuart Mandel from The Athletic. Tony, when talking about CFP format, obviously you have a lot of constituents, coaches, ADs, and so on. The public, the fans, have indicated overwhelmingly they do not want a system where certain conferences get more bids than others. At what point, how much emphasis, if at all, do what the public want come into decisions like this?
Well, first, let's take issue with the way you're phrasing that. I don't really know. I'm not aware of massive studies with real research that have demonstrated that.
It's not a scientific poll, but a poll I put on Twitter this morning. It was 76% for 5+11, 24% for the plan you guys want.
Look, I think, we feel pretty strongly that fans will really gravitate to a play-in weekend. That, providing games that are do or die on the field will drive fan interest. Whether there's enough information that fans have in any one poll about what a new system will be, I'm not aware of how it was phrased or not.
All right, so based on what he just said right there, 5+11, which everybody wants, he is against. And he wants that 4-4-2-2-1 deal. So we're at a complete impasse right now. Now I'm going to let you listen to what the other conference commissioners had to say about this.
Let's pivot to one of our favorite subjects, college football playoff expansion. Yep. I know you have a lot to say about this. And I just want to take you back to when the concept was out there not too long ago where the Big Ten and the SEC had 4 guaranteed spots in expansion. This is going to 14 teams. The Big 12 and the ACC were only guaranteed 2. When you first saw that, model, what went through your head? What went through your heart?
I didn't like it. And obviously that model's been out there for almost a year now. And I didn't like it because I just felt that it created a huge divide between us and those 2 conferences. Now, as you guys know, I have good self-awareness. I know where we reside in the world of college football. But I just felt that it put a line in the sand that didn't need to be there. Okay, I'm a firm believer in that, if you create value, you should be rewarded. Earn it on the field, okay? Every year's a new year. And by the way, with settlement, in theory, it should be creating a level playing field across the board, okay? So I didn't like it.
So Brett Yormack was not in favor of this. Now let's hear from Jim Phillips with the ACC.
Power 4 commissioners all get on the same page when it seems that Greg Sankey and his own coaches seem to have lack of consensus on what they want to do.
We have a really good format right now, 5-7, and we'll stay at 5-7 if we can't come to, some kind of agreement here. I like 5-11 because it gives 4 additional teams a chance to play. It takes you from having 9% of the field that plays FBS football to 12% that get a chance to play in the championship. Access and fairness continue to remain important. I just can't state that high enough. At the end of the day, you earn what you get and you get what you earn.
All right, so that's the ACC's Jim Phillips. So now you've heard from the Big 12 and the ACC, which are 2 of the Power 4 conferences. You know where the Big 10 stands. That's pretty clear. Now you've got a team out there that, for whatever reason, they will not join a conference. But they're kind of a big dog, and there's no way to ignore them when it comes to this. Notre Dame. They are not in favor of the 4-4-2-2-1, which makes perfect sense because they're not in a conference. They want the 5+11. And their AD from Notre Dame said, I happen to think that there should be automatic qualifiers for the Power 4 conference champions, and there should be an automatic qualifier for the highest rated group of 5. He said, but whether it's 12, 14, or 16, I think you have to earn it on the field, and those should be at-large bursts. I think that's the best way, the most repeatable way to get the very best teams to compete for a national championship. And I think most people would agree with that. All right, now lastly, of course, you've got Greg Sankey. He is the other big power player in this, and he's got 50% of the say. Now, obviously, he's leaning towards the 5+11, and the Big Ten has said they would possibly go down that path if the SEC went to 9 games. As I've told you, there's no way that's going to happen because Greg Sankey got read the riot act by the SEC coaches and athletic directors of, what are you doing? Do you not understand strength of schedule, how this works? So Greg Sankey spoke to that earlier.
Back to media days, and I was asked, should a 3-team SEC team be included in the playoffs? And my answer then and my answer now is yes. And that's even in comparison to teams that may have fewer losses, because the intensity and the rigor of our schedule stands alone. And I tweeted a couple weeks ago the scheduling comparisons, but if you run a continuum of our 16 teams' strength of schedule, and it's not my stat, it's the Massey evaluation, Sagarin, ESPN strength of schedule evaluations, and combine those, 14 of our 16 teams have stronger schedules before the first of the ranked CFP teams. That's not Oregon. That's not the first ranked team. That's the first by comparison in strength of schedule. And then come our next two, and then comes everybody else in the CFP rankings.
Yeah, he was talking about strength of schedule, obviously. And it's, look, Big Ten fans, you're not going to like this. I just said something nice about Tony Petiti and the deal you got for TV rights, but you might not want to watch the next 30 to 60 seconds because it's probably going to tick you off.
Just walk away.
But here's the reality. Strength of schedule, there's a big difference. And even though the SEC only plays 8 games and you play 9, there's a huge difference in strength of schedule, and that's by all the rating systems. I actually took the liberty to print out the internet, which I'm not supposed to do.
We don't need to print the internet.
But I did it. And I've shown you this. I'll show it to you quickly. This was strength of schedule last year on December 1st, which is the first 12 games, which is when they determine the college football playoff. Okay? That's why the first 12 games matter more than anything else. Of all the top 12 teams, only one Big Ten team was in there, and that was Ohio State at number 8. All the other teams are SEC. Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, all the way down to even Kentucky. Then you finally get an ACC team at number 13, and then another Big Ten at 14. It's just facts. Now, I went further with that. And like I said, I did print out the internet, and I took an average of the Big Ten strength of schedule versus the SEC strength of schedule, even though, again, you're playing 9 games, SEC 8. And the average strength of schedule for the SEC team is 10.18. So the 10th rated strength of schedule is the average for an SEC team. For the Big Ten, it's 37.6. So the average team in the Big Ten has a 37th strength of schedule. So there's literally no way you're going to get coaches and athletic directors to add a 9th game when there's a big disparity. I will tell you this. I wish it was the other way around. I would rather play 12 SEC games or 10 and then 2 other power conferences. I do like to play other conferences. Or better yet, go 9 and then play an ACC, play a Big 12, and play a Big 10. That'd be perfect for me. That would be my preference because I want big-time ball games. I don't want to play Florida Community College fighting jellyfish. That's not a fun game for me to watch. And it's not a whole lot of fun to cover as a YouTuber. So that would be my preference. But there's no way you're going to get the SEC to move to 9 games. And the Big Ten, look, he's put his feet in the ground and said, I'm not moving. Here's the problem. If we stay with 12 teams, there's no more money. Here is what you get from the college football playoff money distribution. And it's a lot. This is per team, folks. SEC, Big Ten get over $20 million a team. ACC, Big 12, who need money bad, they get 13 and 12. If you go to 16 games and you get rid of the buys, you add a half a dozen more games. And that's a lot more money for the college football playoff to hand out to the teams. And why that matters is because every team now has to come up with $20.5 million to pay athletes, and it goes up 4% a year every year after that, which is not insignificant, by the way. That's almost $1 million a year it goes up for the next 10 years. They need that money. Well, the best way to get it is more games. 16 teams give you that. 5 plus 11 gives you that. So if Tony Petiti says, nope, I'm going to block it, which he can block it. He's got 50% of the power. He can stop this and stick with 12. He's going to have to explain to every conference and every team, I screwed you out of $3-4 million that you badly need, and all the fan bases, all those extra games you were going to get to watch, nah, you're not going to get to watch them because I'm going to be stubborn. And that's going to be difficult because, look, everybody knows the Big Ten and the SEC, they've been kind of bullying the other conferences, and that's just a fact.
In our world, you were either a bully, a toady, or one of the nameless rabble of victims.
All right, who's next?
Yeah, and it just, look, they're a couple of bullies. But when two bullies don't get along, typically that's good for the other conferences. But it's not going to be in this case because less teams are going to get in the playoff, which that would help the Big 12 and the ACC. They're going to get less money. And unfortunately, because they agreed that the Big Ten and SEC have all the power, they kind of had to. Again, they got bullied. It was, you can either agree or we'll just go do our own playoff. So the ACC and Big 12, they didn't have any choice. You know, they got smacked around. Let's just call it what it is.
I'm going to make them an offer he can't refuse.
Well, now they don't have any say other than the gentleman's agreement they had with Petiti and Sankey. And Sankey's listening, and Petiti has told him to stick it. So the pressure that's mounting on Tony is intense. I think because he's a reasonable person, he's highly intelligent. I've listened to the dude. He's smart as crap. I think he'll give in. I do because of the more money, and it's hard to have everybody against you. That is very stressful, and it's going to get worse as we get closer to December when they have to make a decision. And if he doesn't go along with it, it's all on him. The teams that don't get extra money, the fan bases don't get extra games, all that's on Tony Petiti. And he's the one that came up with this. I don't think the other Big Ten teams really give a crap. They may be siding with him, but if we go to 5+11, they're going to be fine with that. Because here's the thing about coaches, they do understand strength of schedule. You know, even though Brett Bielema is out there running his jaw about how SEC's got to go to 9 games. Brett, you played in the SEC, so don't start with me. Yeah, here's Brett Bielema's conference records when he's been in the Big Ten or SEC. When he was at Wisconsin, he won 66% of his in-conference games. Then when he coached at Arkansas, he won 27% of his games in conference. Then now he's at Illinois, he's winning 50%. So as you can see, Brett's just being a homer. That's all it is. And that's okay. Look, I understand that. You're a Big Ten guy now. I'm sure he would have said the exact opposite when he was coaching for Arkansas. But it's a different world. It just kind of is. Now, I will say this, SEC folks, you don't want to hear this. This is another one where I'm going to tick a conference off. Big Ten's improved dramatically. The top of Big Ten is equal to the top of the SEC. I never thought I'd be saying that, especially given the last 15 years. But the last few years, they've really improved. NIL has changed things dramatically, and they're grabbing a lot of great athletes out of the Southeast. That's just a fact. That Jeremiah Smith came out of Florida. He's the best wide receiver in the country. And that's what they're doing. They're using their money to get the best athletes instead of just sticking to their region. And that's changed things. Now, the rest of the conference, middle and bottom, is not as good as the SEC. We know that. That's why that strength of schedule is so one-sided. But who knows, over time that may change. That's why if you do this and you go to 5+11, only do it for 2 years. That way everybody can look at it and see. They want it. See, they're talking about 6 years. That's a mistake. College football is changing like crazy. The longest you should have an agreement on a playoff is 2 years. Do that for a couple of years, see how it goes. And if Big Ten's upset at that point, they can fight their battle. But to hold people hostage by yourself, Tony, that's not right. And you're going to take a ton of grief about it. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know continue to cover all these big college sports stories. And if you've not subscribed, boom, 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 hit that button right there. It won't cost you a dime. Help you get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
I'll turn this damn bus around. That'll end your precious little field trip pretty damn quick, huh?